Hi, I'm Sean Lewis from Journeys Worldwide. Today we're going to be talking to Bruce Simpson from Time and Tide Africa. Time and Tide Africa have got some authentic safari experiences throughout Zambia.
There are beautiful places all over the world, but these are the ones that have meant something to us.
Okay, Bruce, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a long time since we've seen you actually out in Africa. I think you were running some safari camps in Namibia at the time. I was in Zimbabwe, and you've been across to Madagascar. You've done quite a bit in the meantime.
Yeah, I've been lucky in the safari industry. I've spent quite a lot of time in different countries around Africa. One of those guys who my passion has become my job, and so I've spent time living in Botswana, in Namibia, in South Africa, Seychelles. I'm now in a company, Time and Tide, which has got products in Zambia and in Madagascar. So have enjoyed exploring it in the last year and getting to know it again. It's been a tough year in terms of not being able to travel. Surely, like yourself and many people around the world, we've been restricted and we've had to stay at home and be careful in these challenging times. But I've recently just enjoyed the opportunity to travel to both Zambia and to Madagascar, which is quite an uplifting, livening experience again, having had
We've
to
been
stay at home.
watching some of your videos that you've been posting, and it looks, Zambia and Madagascar to me are two destinations for any safari aficionado. That those are your bucket lists. You really got to get there, and so you've got some amazing properties. But your experiences going through the borders looked fantastic and so welcoming, so up to date, very first world, I would say. And you were very impressed as well, obviously, by it.
Yeah, I can tell you, Sean, coming out of South Africa into Madagascar and then into Zambia, the interesting part about it is that, one of the things we may be forgetting as an audience was traveling public is that not very many people are traveling. So it makes the airports really quiet as a comparison. Number two is every single airport I've gone through, there's been an amazing management of people and crowds in the airport. And thirdly, and probably most important for all of us, wanting to travel and planning to travel, is the fact that there are procedures put in place that have been really considerate to the traveling public, to people mindful of the pandemic of COVID, and very restrictive in terms of interaction, and easy to travel. Unbelievably welcoming. Madagascar is a destination that is a new destination for tourism and travel, and so in many ways they're learning. They're eager to welcome people, and that just exemplified, or was magnified as I went through this last month. And then getting into Zambia. Zambia is one of the few countries that have been open for a long time in southern Africa. And so the opportunity to travel there is huge. And the people that I traveled through a couple of airports. In Fui is an international airport, and Lusaka. And both of those, the people welcoming and managing the arrival and departure are just so enthusiastic, so professional, and it's been easy, really easy.
I think that's been something that certainly been always my experience living in Africa, and then people visiting Africa always just saying how warm people are anyway. And I think with what's happened and the lack of tourism now, people are just excited to get tourists coming back again, and because they realize the effect, as you very well know, that when you employ one person, you're not just supporting that one person, you're supporting families behind that.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
also very much involved with the community out there in Zambia, and you're putting a lot back in, and you must have noticed that people are suffering a lot.
yeah, it's Zambia and it's Madagascar. It's very definitely who we are, and it's very definitely who we are as an industry. Time and Tide as an organization, as a tourism business, has got a foundation, the Time and Tide Foundation, which operates in both Zambia and in Madagascar. And there's twofold. I think that what happens with tourism is that we sometimes, not, fully aware of the impact of. And you're right, one person employed is probably looking after 7, 8, up to 12 or 14 people, depending on what environment in Africa. So when you're not able to pay one person's salary or, support one person, in a normal year, you're impacting on a whole support base that are, influenced by that one person's salary. The second thing is these foundations, and particularly this Time and Tide Foundation. When we go into the communities, we're very focused on female empowerment. We're very focused on education. We're very focused on people with disabilities and people who need help. That is driven by revenue earned in the tourism, business. And when there's no tourists, even the foundation, is impacted. There are donations, there are fundraising efforts, but a really large part of it comes out of the tourism environment and out of the business. When you have no tourists, you don't have the ability to, sustain the employment, the support of the employees, the pay going into the employment, will as much as what we have been able to in operating times. And ourselves and many other operators are having to survive for a year on no business. We've all gone and looked at being open in some of the camps. We've opened up in Zambia, we've opened up in Madagascar, we've opened up to both international and to local tourism. But it's about getting that momentum again. And so we are very aware of what's happening in the local communities. Talking to our peers and our competitors, talking to the people in the environment, and it's a real big issue. Not only is it people, it's the conservation of these environments. Everybody has to go and, somehow get food, somehow support their families. And we've been trying as hard as we can to keep that going. And as a company, we're very lucky to have had that ability to do so. But it's now going for a long time. This whole pandemic has, started impacting photographic safaris in Africa as early as February. We're now in November, and the outlook is, anybody's guess, but it looks like real tourism may only start coming back in the high season next year at a percentage we don't know, and into 2022. So we've got a long way to go to look after these people that we are responsible to, these environments that we operate in, and these communities that we are working with and partnering with. It's a big challenge out there.
It is a big challenge, and it's impressive that you've managed to keep going so far, especially because a lot of your camps, they only operate for a certain period of the year. They're not open year round, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's what, so Madagascar is a year-round destination. Zambia isn't. We've only got, one camp that operates 12 months of the year. The South Luangwa is a seasonal environment. When the rains are there and the water is heavy on the ground, there's a lot of clay soils and it's very difficult to get around. We have a canoeing trip that we do between two of our camps. But Chinzombo, which is on the border of the national park, is the one camp that operates year round. In South Luangwa, the 4 camps within the national park only operate from May through November, as does the Lower Zambezi, and that is what Zambia is predominantly. Lua Plains operates at some slightly different times of the year, so they only closed August, September into October. So we've got a little bit of diversity, but it's governed by weather, it's governed by rain, it's governed by accessibility. So when you've got seasonal camps, when you're operating 6-7 months of the year and you're trying to look after people for 12 months of the year, you need a good season. You need to have normal operations to be able to break even through a camp and look after the people that we employ. And a lot of those people have been with us for a very, very long time. Time and Tide in Zambia, which is where we started in the Chongwe camps, and then moved into the South Luangwa and brought into Norman Car Safaris. Norman Car Safaris has been going for 50 years, and I've just been up there, been in the camps, and they've just been greeting and talking to people that worked with Norman Car. So we've got people who've been in our business for a very, very long time, and we've got a big responsibility to them. We've got a big responsibility to the communities, not forgetting that a lot of these safari operators in Africa, including ourselves, Norman Carr in the 50s, 1950, got a piece of land from the paramount chief, and that was very much a start of modern day conservation or conservation tourism, ecotourism, where the land was protected. The land was protected through photographic tourism. There was some hunting at the time that has morphed into complete photographic tourism now. The beneficiaries of the community, and that was the agreement between private sector, being Norman Carr, and the paramount chief. And so we have a responsibility to the agreement was made 70 years ago. And a lot of operators are in the same space where we are mindful of that responsibility and our values that we are driving in our own businesses. So it's been a time that we've had to look hard at ourselves and look hard at our partners and look hard at the stakeholders and work together to get through this.
Must be very hard though that not being able to operate because of the weather, and then also now with the pandemic, but still being able to look after the people and the environment, because poaching is always an impact, and you I know are involved and help with the anti-poaching, and by helping the community it also directly reduces the amount of poaching, and because a lot of poaching is subsistence, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and I think if you look in Africa, there's been some real increases in poaching in different parts of Africa. The role that tourism plays in these national parks is both employment, but then also we are a presence on the ground. Driving around, we would notice any activity that is untoward, and we would be constantly out in the field supporting the conservation initiatives, the anti-poaching, the national parks and authorities. But our presence is a big deterrent. The employment obviously is, having worked in this industry for a very long time, often we have, I was talking just at Chinzomba the other day, we've got a gentleman who's the guard that walks you to and from the tent at night. And he used to be a fisherman, a poacher, in the South Luangwa, National Park. He used to come out at night, take the chance of going and fishing and poaching at night because he needed to look after his family. He had an incident which brought him to one of our camps, Kakuli, and he was then employed, and he's now, a gentleman of fantastic stories, unbelievable knowledge of the bush, and he is employed through photographic tourism. And there's a lot of stories like that. There's a lot of stories where poachers end up in the commercial side of photographic tourism, and so they're taken out of that ecosystem of poaching, and there is the conservation initiative driven through the industry. And that is one of the big things that's happening right now. If people are not able to be employed, and there's a lot of companies and camps that have to put people on furlough, there's been retrenchments, there's been inability to pay full salaries. And those are the scary components of what could and does and has happened in the national parks. So it's a big role we play, ourselves and all the stakeholders in the areas that we operate. It's a hard one in the Luo Plains, where we're the only operator, partnering with Africa Parks, who've been in the national park since the early 20th century, and we are they've got a small camping site. We have got the tented camp, and it's our responsibility to work with that community and with Africa Parks in South Luangwa, Lower Zambezi. It's a whole lot easier because there's a lot of stakeholders, and it's been an amazing thing in Africa where normal competitors for the bed and for the client are collaborating and working really hard out there in the communities from an anti-poaching, from a support point of view. And, I see that, around the whole of Africa. It's in our, environment in Madagascar. We have got an operation which is, we have ownership and the rights to, an island or 4 islands. We've built an operation on there. There's a local community that are beneficiaries and actually live on the island. There are fishermen around, but our foundation do a lot of work in the conservation aspect of the environment, being fishing, being turtle monitoring and protection, be it with lemur relocation, be it with the terns that come and nest on one of our islands. And there it was about subsistence fishing. There's a lot more people without jobs now. There's a lot more fishermen. They used to come in and take the eggs of the terns. Again, less people employed, more people requiring not only just food, but also, it means to, sell something to make the money support the family. So that's
one of the
a big
important
part
things
of
is
who we
that,
are.
conservation and the future of wildlife and wild places is very much pretty much in the hands of yourselves and various other people like yourselves. Because unless there's a financial value placed on these things, nobody's going to look after them.
Yeah. Look, and I think a lot of people ask, what can we do? What are we doing? What should be done? My only, advice and plea is that people travel, that people understand where the challenges are. Because the more people that travel, the more long-term sustainability is being considered, and we're continuing with what we're doing. There's some wonderful support in the short term, and that's always welcome, and that's always makes a huge impact. I mean, we're running an internal a funding mechanism which the employees have put together, at senior management level, and some support that we've got out of our past guests and friends, where it's very much about survival, food, and housing. There's a lot of people in that space. But if everybody continues traveling to Africa when they can, we must always remember, we are in some of the most remote, most unpopulated, most isolated parts of the world. So the challenge of flying out of your home, getting into an airplane and getting into Africa, the care and the respect to this COVID needs to be considered quite a lot in that process. And I believe that the flying, and I've seen it myself, the flying component has been really well managed and handled. Getting into Africa is when you are in isolated, remote places. So it's a whole lot safer for the use of a word than maybe in a lot of the urban areas in the rest of the world. And by doing that, you are supporting the people in these environments we talk about, the conservation that we're talking about, and it becomes a long-term sustainability, which is so important because we know the impact of poaching in an area in 1 year versus the protection in 10 years can be multiples of, and our short-term protection for the long-term sustainability is key in this time.
Yeah, and Norman Carr, he's always been one of those men I've looked up to and heard a lot about growing up in particular. I actually even have a copy of the book Kakuli at home here in Australia. And Kakuli, I haven't been fortunate enough to go across to the camp yet, but can you tell me a bit about it, Bruce?
Yeah, so Kakuli, and you mentioned Norman Carr, and he is, he's a big name along with a few others that came after in Zambia, and the founder of, or the initiator of the modern day conservation ecotourism. And it was very much about the walking safari. It was very much about the protection of conservation areas, through photographic walking safaris. And he always said that, you've never really seen Africa until you've walked it. And that's very much about what the South Luangwa is. That's very much about what Kakuli is. It's one of 4 camps we've got inside of the national park. And a lot of people do, the traditional safari where you go into the camp. It's on the bank of the river, beautiful view, and always abundant game in the river there. Whether it's the crocs and the hippos that are permanently, whether it's the general game, the uniqueness of some of the species, and the elephants that come down. It's right in the heart of the park, and people are the prolific predators. It's known as the Valley of the Leopard. The South Luangwa, the wild dog at certain times of the year, the lions, the interaction with the buffalo and the elephant. It's very much about that. And Kakuli sat on the banks of the river, 6 rooms, all of them spread out, overlooking on the river, in a grove of some of the most amazing groves of trees. When I got to join the Time and Tide group, and I've been in the safari industry and working with islands in the Indian Ocean. I guided for 8 years, and so like my passion is the bush, and I'm very lucky to do it as a job and a career. And one of the first things I did was I went into the South Luangwa and I did a walking safari between 2 of our camps, and I ended up at Kakuli. And it's just one of those real experiences. I talk about it now, and I get excited. For a walk a year ago, because we've all been stuck in our offices and stuck at home, and I think we all lost our freedom in a sense, the freedom to just walk down to the park or, go on a trip or, go into another country and do these things. And that's what South Luangwa is about. They've got unbelievable game drives. There's some unique species there that you only get in the South Luangwa, the giraffe species, the wildebeest. The birding is phenomenal, the diversity of the habitat. And when you walk in that environment, different. And I believe that, that's what Zambia's got. That's what Zambia's got that is still remained so much more than some of the other parts of Africa that I've traveled through and I've worked in. And I think that the reality of all of this is that Norman Carr was right. If you walk an environment, you really get to understand it. And I'm a big believer that that's where our brand of tourism is going again. Zambia has got that in abundance. And whether you're doing it at the Lower Zambezi or South Luangwa in the Lower Plains, different habitat, different experiences. And Kikuli is in the heart of that, that space of walking, exploring, experiencing, and that opportunity to track or to go on game viewing or, just sit in a hide or, sit in a space. That's the most amazing thing about a park like that.
That, for me, was always what kept me going as a guide. I was a guide for about 20 years, and it just, I wouldn't have done it that long if it hadn't been for the walking. There's no ways, sitting in a car and driving around. It's great to see and get close to elephant and lion, and they still relax. But when you're on foot and everything just comes alive and your senses all just wake up, and it's exciting, and everything just changes. And I know a lot of people ask me that, when they say, where do you go on safari? Where's the best place? And I said, well, it depends. If you're a first timer, if you're more of a seasoned traveler. But certainly for the seasoned traveler, Zambia's just got to be top of the list. For a real authentic experience, the walking is just phenomenal. And I spent a lot of time at Mana, just over the river from Lower Zambezi National Park. And that has got to be one of the best places to me in Africa, Lower Zambezi, with that Zambezi River. It's beautiful down there.
Yeah, Sean, I think you're right. And having had a similar sort of, start in the industry to you, where, my job was to show people around and to get them excited about Africa. And, it's those once off, those unique, those moments and those experiences. And there is something about walking. There's so many unbelievable parks and places to go to in Africa. And you're absolutely right. If you're a first timer and you want to tick things off, whatever your interests are. But one of the things that the Zambia does have is that still has got that rawness of Africa of old and that excitement. So, you talk about the Lower Zambezi. Lower Zambezi has got diversity that very, very few places in Africa has got. So you can go to places where you can do the most dramatic canoe safari with, elephants on the bank, general game coming down, unbelievable bird species, hippos and crocs like you can't count. But then it's also got the walking, it's got the driving into the national park, coming off the escarpment down towards the river, 3 different habitat types. There's another thing that we do in Zambia, which, we sometimes forget, and those are sleep outs. We do that in the Lower Zambezi, we do that in the South Luangwa, we do that in Lower Plains. And it's, again, very much about who we are. But these environments lend it to yourself. We operate camps, in Zambia, and only one of them, 2 of them have got Wi-Fi. Now, that's a big contentious question, but and that's Chinzombo and Lower Plains. But at Chongwe, we've got some Wi-Fi now that there's a bit of evolution, but of the service. But it's very much about get out walking, go out and do a sleep out as one of your nights in these areas where there's the craziness of sleeping out in Africa. But also then the stars, the animals, the sounds. It's the other side of walking where you are listening, hearing, smelling, touching, feeling, and not just being driven around and not to discredit the safari, the game drive, because it's got a huge part to play, and it's an amazing part of being able to see, the predators and other animals and getting close to elephants, etc. So I'm not discrediting it as much as the combination of a walk plus a sleep out plus a game drive plus a canoeing safari. All of that is available in abundance in places like the Lower Zambezi, and that's how you really experience Africa, and that's how you create memories, and that's how you create moments that you'll just never forget.
Those like those sleep outs and experiences like that, it's just, to me, that's quintessential. It's something you have to do to really experience Africa. With the sleep outs, are they, how do you do them? Are you on platforms or just small tents out, or how are you doing them?
No, I mean, we've got everything from a bed in a riverbank with a mosquito net over it to hammock in the Lure Plains, which is covered by a mosquito net. So they're real experiences. We try to walk to the sleep out experience. Chinzomba is the one camp that you might have to drive into just to get into a suitable location, and that's got very much to do with the authenticity and the remoteness of the experience, but also just obviously the safety of. But if you think about our sleep outs, which are in the South Luangwa National Park, and we go from Louis or Nsolo or Kakuli, as you asked. We go a lot of the times into the riverbed. We have our dinner and our meals there. You're cooking on an open fire. You're sitting around a fire listening to everything, and you do. There's a mattress, there's a bed, there's a mosquito net over you, and it's a very real experience. It's not a platform. It is real Africa. It's the real deal.
Sitting on the ground, and I can actually I can feel it all now. I can feel that warm breeze. I can hear the crickets, the cicadas, and the lions roaring. I mean, it's amazing how secure you feel. You pull that sheet up around your chin, and when that lion's roaring, you feel so much more secure. It's a phenomenal experience.
It's an interesting thing that you say, and I think that one of the things we forget about in urban environments, and I'm going to take us out of the bush for a moment, but I went for a cycle with my wife and two daughters yesterday, and we were cycling in a park in a forest, and at one point we were quite close to a road and a highway, and it was very noisy. And my little 8-year-old, 10 minutes later, said, "Why is it so quiet?" And we sat there listening to birds, and we were talking about the silence, and it was quite interesting in an urban environment. And she noticed that. And when you get into these national parks, and you mentioned things like cicadas and crickets and lions, now they're worlds apart in terms of whether they are tick off or exciting or, great brands for Africa. But there's something about being able to hear a cricket. There's something about being able to hear and identify a cicada. There's something about, looking up at the stars and recognizing Mars close to the moon. And there's something real about a lion roaring, which is quintessential Africa. And it's so important to experience everything like that. We don't have that in an urban.
It does. It wakes up your primeval instincts, and it gets the hair on your back going. It is primeval.
Yeah.
Now, Liua, looks phenomenal as well. You've got an awesome property up there, and it's just, you're out in the middle of nowhere pretty much. There's beautiful big plains, and again, only certain times of the year, but that's quite a new property as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so we opened up, 3 years ago, and it's a partnership with ourselves and Africa Parks, who looks after the park. And I think, if I'm correct, they've been operating there and looking after the park since 2003. And it's a partnership with the community. It's a very different, unique environment, and Zambia's got all of these. There's some very specific places that have done well and have done commercially well in Zambia. The Lure National Park is a far away, remote place. People who really know Africa and who are really looking to get out into those vast, different, unique spaces will go into Lure Plains National Park. A lot of people self-drive in there. There is a campsite with the Africa Park setup, and then we've got our environment, which is within the national park, and we operate a small 6-tent camp. And it's, again, it's you talk about isolation, you talk about the uniqueness of the environment, you talk about the space of only being or being the only camp there. And it actually can be a year-round destination. It's very much about the diversity, the uniqueness of the wildebeest migration. So it's one of it's the second largest wildebeest migration in Africa. There's tens and thousands of these animals. They're starting now. They're moving from the north into the south of the park, where we built the camp. They will start dropping their young now. So now's the season to get in there, and you'll see, the wildebeest dropping their young at the beginning of the rain seasons. It's when the predator activity is exciting. It's when the vultures, the hyena, the jackal, the lion, the everything. Obviously, the beauty of the rain season, when birds and butterflies and flowers and everything come out, and then the majority of the animals are in the south in that January, February, March time. We operate the camp all the way through into August, and in many ways, one could operate there, a full year. But it is very much about the community who we engage and partner with, and where our employees come from, and the owners or the people who've got the rights to the land. There's an amazing cultural history there, with the Lozi kings still living and operating, out of the plains for a very large part of the year. The birds, the huge flocks of wattle cranes, getting into the rain season, the pratincoles flying around. But as I say, the wildebeest are a big one, the zebra, and you get a lot of diversity in a place like that. But it's almost as if you have it for yourself, and that's something special and something unbelievably unique.
That's very special, I think. And I think you obviously do have to pay for it, but it's every cent well spent. It's well worth it out there. And Zambia, I think generally, it's the phenomenal diversity of wildlife that you have out there. And I always say, when people ask me leopard, where do we go to see leopard? There's no question about it, Zambia. And then the birds, it's as you were saying earlier, the diversity. You got, I think it's over 1,000 species in Zambia. It's a huge number. I can't remember the number. And just beautiful, the carmine bee eaters and all the other bee eaters, and the wild dog population is good up in Zambia now. And I think you've got so much going there.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about a destination. So if you look at Zambia, quite interestingly, and in some ways ironically, it was one of the earlier photographic tourism destinations in Africa. Other countries came later. Yes, there was a lot of hunting happening, and there was development at different times. But neighboring countries that this brand of tourism or private sector involvement in these wildlife conservation areas, it started very early on. And I think that if you look at the branding of a destination, quite often just tells you something about it. And if you're branding, cheetahs jumping in cars, and sort of leopards in trees, and big five, and just focusing on a species, a specific time of the year versus diversity. And when you have a country like Zambia, that carmine bee eaters are a big part of their branding. When you have a country like Zambia that's got wattle cranes in the Luo Plains, or when you've got the diversity, the huge herds of elephants and hippo and crocodiles in the low Zambezi, that for me is an exciting destination. It's got it all. And the fact that you are pointed in the direction of the diversity, so if it's walking, if it's canoeing, if it's driving, if it's sleeping in a camp, sleeping out of a camp, if it's your breakfast being cooked on a fire, on the ground, in a camp that has got, incredible luxury in the sense of the word, and comforts maybe are better words. And that's about where you sleep, how you sleep, and how you eat. But it's those diverse, authentic experiences. And carmine beaches, wild dogs, wattle cranes, things like that as part of a branding just talks to the diversity of a country like Zambia.
And I think I could carry on. I love Zambia, and I could carry on talking for a long time, but we've unfortunately run out of time. But Bruce, I'd also like to, at some stage, not today, unfortunately, but talk a bit more about Madagascar, because that is definitely a bucket list item, and you've got a really beautiful property there. And so hopefully one day we'll be able to chat a bit more about that. But thanks for everything, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up again with you soon.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, nice to catch up, and hopefully it's in Africa soon. Madagascar, look, that's uniqueness and diversity on a totally different level. And absolutely. I look forward to chatting to you about that, because that's real.
Thanks, Bruce.
Let us take you on an adventure. Welcome to the South Luangwa. Zambia's premier wildlife destination. The Valley of the Leopard.
Welcome to the Lower Zambezi, to your Chongwe Safari's adventure. We have the largest variety of activities in Zambia. You will live amongst Africa's giants.
From the big to the small, you can see it all.
We've been talking with Bruce Simpson from Time and Tide Africa. It's been fantastic catching up with Bruce and talking about the safari camps in Zambia, but we look forward to catching up again at another stage and talking about Madagascar. Thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you next time.